He found it difficult to understand how these men, once the most loyal knights of their household and longtime protectors of Elena, could betray them. They were known to have risked their lives for her in the past. With a smile, Jamal greeted Elena at the supposed venue. However, to her surprise, the place was deserted and neglected. She questioned how an event could possibly take place there, and Jamal, clearly nervous, claimed that preparations were merely delayed and that guests would arrive shortly. Thinking he was joking, Elena playfully teased him about hosting a performance in such a rundown spot. As they talked, Ghislain scanned the area. Although it looked like an abandoned street, he noticed that all potential escape paths had been blocked off, hinting at a well-thought-out trap. Elena, uneasy, tugged at his arm and suggested they leave. Jamal urged her to stay and watch the performance, but Elena declined, saying she didn't want to stay in such a place. Ghislain jokingly asked his sister if she'd been working out, noting her strength. Before she could reply, Philip appeared, wearing a threatening expression and asking Elena to wait. Alarmed, she confronted the men about their odd behavior and asked what was going on. Jamal apologized for scaring her and, with an unsettling tone, said a request had been made. At that moment, 3 men entered. 2 wore black, and the leader, dressed in a blue coat and matching hat, was named Frank. He praised the traders for their swift work. Jamal approached Frank, stating that they had delivered their mistress as agreed and that their arrangement was now complete. Upon seeing Ghislain, Frank frowned, noting that he hadn't asked for him to be included. Clinging tightly to her brother, Elena held on with a trembling grip as Jamal, grinning, mocked Ghislain for foolishly following them into what he called his own grave. Ghislain challenged Jamal, asking if he truly thought he could betray them and still escape. Jamal, looking smug, brushed off the warning, telling Ghislain to worry about his own fate instead. He claimed he and his partner could simply disappear to a faraway place. Tired of a struggling county constantly raided by barbarians, Jamal said they had chosen to leave, just like many others had. But before he could continue, Ghislain suddenly closed in and delivered a powerful blow, cutting through Jamal's armor with a single strike. Shocked, everyone watched as Jamal's body collapsed. With a cold voice, Ghislain stated that those who left before had never betrayed their own people. He then turned to Philip and demanded to know if he was wrong. Philip caught sight of Elena cursing Jamal and calling him a fool. In disbelief, he muttered that no real knight should fall so easily to a novice. But before he could draw his sword, Ghislain threw his weapon, hitting Philip in the forehead and killing him instantly. Elena quickly ran to her brother's side. One of the black-clad men, still in shock, asked Frank if the young man before them was really Ghislain. Another remarked that Ghislain had no known combat experience or training. Frank agreed, though he admitted it was hard to believe. Watching Ghislain dispatch 2 knights so effortlessly with mana-enhanced strikes had taken them by surprise. Trembling, Elena asked her brother what was going on. Ghislain didn't answer. Instead, he struck her neck gently, knocking her unconscious. As he laid her down carefully, he told her to rest for now. Observing everything, Frank thanked Ghislain for making their job easier. He acknowledged that Ghislain was far more dangerous than they had expected, and admitted that they had originally planned to eliminate Jamal and Philip themselves. As he lit his pipe, Frank asked whether Ghislain had been hiding his true powers all along. Calmly, Ghislain pulled his sword from Philip's skull and asked, in a composed tone, why Frank was so curious about his abilities. While surveying the group, Ghislain dismissed the black-clad men as unremarkable threats. But Frank was different. His overwhelming mana made it clear he was in a league of his own. Realizing the danger, Ghislain decided to end the fight quickly. Releasing his mana, he summoned a set of strings and demanded to know who had given the order for the ambush. Frank sneered and replied that a dying man had no need to know. Understanding that they wouldn't reveal anything willingly, Ghislain readied himself, confident the truth would come out one way or another. One of Frank's men asked if they should just behead Ghislain, but Frank instructed them to capture him alive, instead breaking all his bones to shatter his mind. With a cruel grin, he added that Ghislain's screams would be the perfect symphony. At Frank's signal, the 2 henchmen charged. Ghislain reached into his pocket and threw a firecracker, startling one of the attackers just long enough for Ghislain to rush in and drive his blade into the man's head, killing him instantly. The second subordinate scoffed, calling it a cheap trick, and lunged forward. Ghislain swiftly swung his sword behind him to parry the attack. As they clashed, Ghislain tightened his grip and struck the man's hand, throwing him off balance. Seizing the moment, Ghislain delivered a clean blow that severed the man's head. Suddenly, Frank attacked. But Ghislain, already anticipating the move, blocked it with a second sword. Frank was caught off guard, stunned that Ghislain could defend himself so precisely from such an awkward angle. Confident that his ambush had been flawless, Frank was caught completely off guard. Ghislain quickly knocked Frank's sword downward, sprang to his feet, and delivered a sharp slash across Frank's neck, sending his pipe clattering to the ground. But to Ghislain's surprise, Frank recovered almost instantly, having used mana to reinforce his neck. Frank admitted he would have been beheaded if he hadn't focused his mana at the last moment to absorb the blow. Realizing what happened, Ghislain understood that Frank had minimized the damage by channeling energy directly into the vulnerable spot. Frank then assumed a battle stance and asked where Ghislain had learned such strange swordsmanship. With a sinister grin, he declared that this would be where Ghislain died.